All right, so I am a little bit late on this July wrap up, but better late than never, right? So let's talk about what I read in the month of July. So this first one's kind of cheating a little bit. I actually started it at the very end of June and then finished it on like July 1st or 2nd. That was New Spring, book 0 of the Wheel of Time. It takes place many, many years before the Eye of the World actually begins, and it wasn't quite the story that I thought it was going to be or that I was looking for. I actually reviewed this in combination with Crossroads of Twilight because there was not enough content between those two books to have standalone reviews, but it was fine. If you really love Moraine and Swan and Lan, you might get something out of it. It just wasn't quite the story that I was looking for. I really wanted, there's a fly in here. I really wanted more of a Lan and Moraine sort of quest to the two rivers and then lead directly into Eye of the World. Sort of like how Rogue One, the Star Wars prequel, like ends with Vader. Anyway, that's what I was looking for. It's not what I got. It was fine. Bug's gonna be the death of me. So I mean, if you're craving more Wheel of Time, read it. It's not necessary. What is necessary though is Knife of Dreams, which was my first, finally back to non-slog. Wow, that's bright. Non-slog Wheel of Time book, and this was much better. For a while though, it actually took me a bit to get into because the prologue's huge. I think it was 100 or 150 pages long in the hardback. It was long, and it was a lot of characters I didn't really care about, so I was like, uh-oh, this is not starting off great. And then it got a lot better, and there were tons of great moments. I actually have a review of that up on my channel, and it's definitely a top 5 Wheel of Time book. Not that it's that hard when 3.5 books are part of the slog, but I have a feeling it'll stick around the top 5 by the end of this because it was sort of a return to form. It was the last official Robert Jordan book that he wrote, and you could tell that he was trying to wrap a lot of things up and sort of get things towards a memory of light. And here we go. We're finally getting to the last battle. So I already started The Gathering Storm. I'm enjoying that already. You can definitely see a little bit of the difference with Sanderson taking over, but you still feel the heart of Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time because, he left so many notes behind and outlines, and he had a lot of stuff planned. Just A Memory of Light was going to be a gigantic book. It was basically going to be 3 times the size of a standard Wheel of Time book. So let's just say average is 600 pages. Let's just call it an 1,800 page book. So Tor split it up, and that's why we have Towers of Midnight and A Memory of Light in addition to The Gathering Storm. So onwards and upwards to the rest of the Wheel of Time. Knife of Dreams, the book that I was supposed to be talking about, was very good, ended on a great note, and I'm excited to finish. Next up, I actually read, as part of the collaborative efforts here on BookTube, we talked about the Faithful and the Fallen series already, and now our same group of characters is reading the follow-up sequel trilogy of Blood and Bone, starting with The Time of Dread. Now, John Gwynne, being John Gwynne, writes a lot of great action, compelling characters, usually compelling villains, and interesting plots. I did not love this book as much as I thought I was going to. I really thought it was going to be basically picking up where Faithful and the Fallen left off. I do have a review of this, and we have the live chat on my channel as well for this discussion. It just, it wasn't quite there for me. I felt like it was lacking a compelling villain. The characters, the POVs that we got, I only really cared about 2 of them. 2 of the main ones I could do without. And that's unfortunate because I really like John Gwynne's characters and how he balances POVs. The good thing is it is a smaller scope. There are significantly less POVs, so you only had 4 in this first book, and maybe it'll expand a little bit beyond that, but it's not like the 12 to 15 or however many were in Faithful and the Fallen. So it's a little bit more of a more focused story, a little bit of a smaller scale. It just didn't quite do it for me, and I had really, really high hopes for it, so maybe my hopes were just too high. But overall, it's still really well written. It's well paced. It's a little bit darker and more ominous than Faithful and the Fallen. Just sort of the context of the story and what it's dealing with and what's around the Banished Lands. And I mean, it's a good book. It wasn't great for me. Next up, some of the sci-fi stuff that I read though. I continued The Expanse, which was book 2, Caliban's War. So this, I'm just kind of going slow with The Expanse as I wrap up the Wheel of Time and Dresden Files and, Of Blood and Bone and some other things, I'll have a lot of space opening up in my TBR. I don't know when I'll continue on to Abaddon's Gate, but I am going to read it. It's just probably not going to be for a couple of months. But Caliban's War was still very good overall. I didn't quite like it as much as Leviathan Wakes, simply because maybe it was just Leviathan Wakes was newer and more interesting. And I think I overall like the plot a little bit more of Leviathan Wakes. I like the POVs more in this book because, one, you get more of them. You introduce new characters, Abasarala and Bobby, as well as Prax. So they are definitely more interesting than just having Holden and Miller. But the overall mystery in the story, I felt like wasn't quite as good because without spoiling anything, it's what happened in Leviathan Wakes. They basically take sort of the same thing that was going on and not redo it, but evolve it a little bit, and it just wasn't quite as interesting of a plot. But I'm excited to continue because obviously, in this big series, there's going to be a lot more to pull from, and there's so many different planets and so much that you could expand on in the universe that I am interested in seeing where that goes, especially based on things that happen in this book, because this book wraps up a lot from Leviathan Wakes and answers a lot of questions, but it also raises a ton of new ones. So I am excited to see that moving forward. And also, Avasarala is hands down the most interesting character in this story right now, in both the book and the show. Her dialogue is hilarious. She's always cussing at everybody. She's, this older UN politician, doesn't take shit from anybody. She holds all the power in the room whenever she's dealing with somebody. And I laughed so many times reading her dialogue. It was fantastic. And honestly, the crew members, bringing Prax into the crew, he wasn't the most interesting character, and it was part of his plot line that I didn't care about all that much. But the crew is always a good time when you're reading them, just because you have the dynamic of Holden, Naomi, Alex, and Amos, and then you add Prax into it, who kind of replaces Shed almost in the crew for sort of that smarter, intellectual kind of guy that doesn't necessarily fit in as well with the rest of the group. If you read Leviathan Wakes, you know what happened to Shed. But I don't know, I am enjoying these books so far. I didn't quite love this one as much, but I hear that they just get better and better and better, so I'm excited to continue for sure. Now, these last three books were excellent. So, Howling Dark, book 2 of the Sun Eater series by Christopher Rocchio, which is going to be 5 books. This book kicks all the ass. It is better in every way than Empire of Silence, and I really loved Empire of Silence. This was just so much better. The mystery, the expansion of the world and the universe, digging into the Cielson, all these ancient civilizations, dealing with Hadrian's quest to, try to get to some kind of peace with the Cielson if it's possible. Obviously, if you know the story of Sun Eater, he's telling it to you well into the future, where peace did not happen because he kills them all. And that's just the intro to the story. So that's not a spoiler. He's retelling his life and how he got to that moment. So you're building on that and filling in details. And just everything about the story. Christopher Rocchio's writing is gorgeous. I've never highlighted books so much, and on Kindle, or I write them down. I don't highlight my books. I'm not a monster. But there's so many things that hit you and that I want to remember. And he blends science fiction and fantasy so well in the space opera that he's building, and you can really see his influences, Dune especially, just from things that he's built and certain things, aspects of the world and the foundation of the civilization, how it's put into these books. It's fantastic, and I love Dune, so I love it. Even the comparisons to the Red Rising, that he hasn't read it, but when Leanna and I talk about this, and we talked about this at length as a spoiler discussion as well, there's just so much that you see, compared to Red Rising, Dune, Name of the Wind. There's so much in these books that are just great, and you can see the influences, and it's not copying them, but it's great. He does combat incredibly well. It's always engaging. It's always sort of edge of your seat action, whether it be a one-on-one duel or large scale, space combat. The guy knows his stuff, and it's insanely impressive that this was only the second book that he wrote, because wow, It's pretty awesome, and this is easily becoming one of my favorite series already. I have actually read Demon in White, which is book 3. I'll have that review up shortly on the channel as well. And it's honestly, it's even better than Howling Dark. It's insane how good these books are. But he just, man, I don't really have a whole lot of negatives to say about these books. They're awesome. Everybody should read them. They're fantastic. So of course, those were the scheduled books that I had. What I always do as I finish up the last few books of the Dresden Files is I put them in at the end, because as big as these books are getting, they read insanely fast. So what I thought was going to be the last thing that I read was Changes, book 12. I'm forgetting, 11 or 12, whatever it is. Changes being 550-ish pages. First of all, a Dresden Files book that's that long reads much faster than a lot of other fantasy books that are that long. Just because of the pacing of it, the nature of what's going on. Jim Butcher just makes you want to keep reading, and everything's usually pretty well paced and fast paced. And honestly, it's a lot easier to digest and get through than like a big epic fantasy like a Wheel of Time or a Malazan. It's not that kind of style of writing. So I fly through these books, and I'm not the only one. And I'm not even a fast reader, but they go quick. So I ended up reading Changes in about 2 or 3 days. And it was hands down, and still is, the best Dresden book that I've ever read. I was kind of joking with people in Discord at first, because everybody hypes this up saying like, this is the game changer. Like, this is when everything, goes wild in the series. A couple hundred pages into it, I was like, yeah, this is a really good Dresden book, but like nothing that crazy has happened yet. And then it was just like thing after thing after big event after holy crap. And then it was just like, what? By the end of it. It's great. It totally changes the game for this series in so many ways. I have a review of this up already on the channel. It's excellent. And just the ramifications from this story are going to impact the rest of the series for a long time. It was fantastic. But of course, since I had a couple days left after this, I then went ahead and read Ghost Story, which is the follow-up, which takes place 6 months later. All these books are like a year or so later. And Ghost Story, based on the end of it Changes, which I will not spoil here, I just couldn't resist. I had to read it. And it was also fantastic. It's a little bit different for a Dresden book. It still reads mostly the same, but obviously this book's existence and what's going on is very different for the series. This was actually super emotional, and I talk about it in my review, which I'll link below as well. There were so many good moments and like tear-jerking moments, and a lot more emotion than I expected to get from the series in this book. It was really well done. The topics that it tackles, and just, again, everything that happened in Changes, just the reverberations from that throughout the series, and seeing how the ending of Changes impacts everybody in this world and what's going on in Ghost Story. It was great. I have a spoiler review, like I just mentioned, of that, where I talk about everything that I thought about the book. Dresden Files is awesome. I don't even have one on my TBR right now for August, but I'm probably going to end up reading Cold Days, even though it's like the biggest Dresden book that there is right now. So again, I think I read Ghost Story in like 2 days. They fly by because they're fantastic and fast-paced and just easy to read. I can't recommend Dresden Files enough. It's fantastic, and it's such a good series. But yeah, so that's one of the biggest reading months that I've had in a while. I'm a little bit busier in August and doing a bunch of collabs and stuff, so I probably won't get to as much in August, but who knows? I'm going to try to find some time to get in more Dresden, because I'm nearing the end now. I've got 4 Dresden books left to get through until the other 6 or 4, whatever, come out, and then the other 3 that he's doing after that. So a lot of Dresden to come. It's not going anywhere on the channel. This series is great. But that does wrap up the 6 books that I read in the month of July. I'm already well into August. I finished Demon in White. I actually read The Lesser Devil, which is the novella by Christopher Rocchio. It takes place in the same world during part of Empire of Silence, when Hadrian is in cryosleep, and it follows a different character. So that's pretty cool because the way that Rocky sets up this world, he can expand on it a lot. There's time jumps and things like that, and there's a ton of world to cover, so he can write all these different stories. So I read that. We're going to talk about that in our next live chat on Leanna's channel. So we'll talk about Demon in White and the Lesser Devil. I am about 60% of the way through Salem's Lot, and I just started The Gathering Storm as well. So I've got a lot going for August, and who knows, I'll find some time for some more Dresden Files. But I would love to know what you all read in the month of July. Definitely leave me a comment down below. Let me know your favorites, what you think about anything that I read, and what you're looking forward to reading. And until next time.